Would you like to know how to improve your university essays? If you would, stick around. Hello everyone, welcome back to The Attic. My name's Mark Jago, and in this series of videos, I'm showing you how to improve your university essay writing. In the previous video, we focused in on the importance of answering the question. In this video, we're going to look at a way in which that can go wrong. So you're really trying to answer the question, you know how important it is, but you kind of just miss the mark. And that can be because the logic of your argument doesn't take you to where you want your argument to go. Okay, so we're going to look at how that problem can come up and how to fix it. So if you're finding this kind of stuff useful, why not subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get the updates. So let's go back to our first question. Is time real? Does time exist? And we want a yes/no answer to that question. Suppose you've been doing a philosophy of time, metaphysics course, and you know that one of the main arguments in the vicinity of does time exist is McTaggart's argument. McTaggart argues for the unreality of time. His argument is an argument for the conclusion that time doesn't exist. Okay, so McTaggart's argument implies time isn't real, in the sense that if McTaggart's argument is correct, then time isn't real. Or a different way of putting it, a slightly kind of different focus would be, if we have reason to believe McTaggart's argument, then we have reason to think that time isn't real. Now that's all well and good if you think that McTaggart's argument works. You can argue that, yeah, McTaggart's argument works, so correct, time isn't real. And the logic there is good, okay? If you support McTaggart's argument, which has the conclusion that time isn't real, then you have successfully answered that question. Time isn't real, and I've argued for this using McTaggart's argument, which I've shown I think works. That's all well and good. The problem goes if you want to argue against McTaggart's argument, and this is something I see a lot of times, right? Somebody might go, I don't think McTaggart's argument is any good. So because McTaggart's argument doesn't work, I don't think it's right to say that time isn't real. I'm going to go from denying McTaggart's argument to denying the conclusion that time isn't real. But the logic there is bad, okay? We basically have a conditional here from this to this, and if we are denying the conclusion on the basis of denying the premise, we're basically denying the antecedent. So if you study a course on first year logic or informal reasoning, you're probably going to come across this phrase, denying the antecedent. It's a fallacy. It's a bad bit of reasoning. Just because the antecedent is false doesn't mean the conclusion is false. McTaggart's argument is one reason for thinking that time isn't real, but just because it doesn't work, it doesn't tell us that time isn't real. There might be other arguments that have the conclusion that time isn't real. Just because one of the arguments doesn't work doesn't mean that the other arguments aren't going to work either. Okay, so we can't go from my really good argument that McTaggart got it wrong to the conclusion that time really is real. If you did want to argue on that basis, that is, you want to conclude that time is real based on a discussion of McTaggart's argument failing, what you would really need to establish first is that the only reason for thinking that time isn't real is based on McTaggart's argument. So there the implication would be going this way. By denying this, we can then deny this. And you might think that's right. You might think the only reason we have for thinking that time isn't real is based on this one argument. If that argument doesn't work, then we have undermined any reason for thinking that time isn't real. Strictly speaking, you shouldn't answer the question there by saying, time is real, I've established that time is real, yes, time is real. You should say, we have no reason to think that time isn't real. Now notice that that isn't quite the same thing as answering the question. The question was, is time real, yes or no? If the conclusion you've got to is, we've got no reason for thinking that it isn't real, you haven't quite got there yet. A better answer would do all of that and then add on top of there is no reason to think that time is unreal, positive reasons for thinking that time is real. Okay, so you might spend most of your essay discussing and rejecting McTaggart's argument, plus your argument or your statement that it's the only reason for thinking that time isn't real, plus reasons for thinking that absent any reason to think time is unreal, we should say that it's real. What might those reasons be? Well, you might say something like this. At various times last year, I felt like lockdown was never going to end. But at some point this year, at some time this year, it really will end. Those statements are true. Okay, they talk about sometimes. They talk about various times, many times, sometime in the future. When you talk about something, when you say something and what you say is true, prima facie, that thing exists. That's a very good reason for thinking that that thing exists. Okay, so you might argue we have very strong prima facie reasons for thinking that time does exist. The only reason for thinking that time doesn't exist is McTaggart's argument. Big long argument that it doesn't work. Conclusion, therefore I'm concluding that time does exist. Great, you have answered the question. That is what you're trying to do. Okay, good. So the important point there was, if you're going to be answering the question, yes or no, you have to make sure that the logic of your argument supports your answer fully. Don't make that mistake. Don't be denying the antecedent. Make sure your argument supports the conclusion. That's an important part of answering the question. Okay, fantastic. If you found that helpful, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to get updates. Next time, we are going to be talking about essay structure. This is a super important principle. I think it's one of the main things for transforming okay essays into really fantastic high-scoring essays. So I hope you join me back for that. Thank you so much for watching this far and for all your support. I will see you next time.